Hello, everybody. Now, PR and SEO, or search engine optimization, are more connected today than ever. Modern PR practitioners require so much more than a basic understanding of search, yet there are few search marketing resources specifically tailored for the PR and comms sector. And when you Google for SEO advice, can you actually trust that you'll find the very latest information about what impacts search rank? And actually, in the last few years, we've seen SEO professionals move much more into traditional PR territory when it comes to link building, or digital PR as many call it. So to help address SEO knowledge gaps amongst PR professionals, we asked international search expert Judith Lewis, who joins us here today, to write an SEO best practice guide for PR, which we were proud to publish a couple of weeks ago. Now, if you haven't read it already, it's brilliant. In fact, Google's very own John Mueller called it awesome in a recent tweet. And if that's not the best endorsement and a reason to download it right now, then I don't know what is. The link to the guide will actually be put in the chat shortly for you. Now, as well as being called a guru by Google's finest, Judith Lewis is a renowned search expert, speaker, trainer, author, and search marketing awards judge. She's an entertaining, warm, and generous person to hang out with and chat all things SEO, wine, and chocolate. And these are her three specialist subjects. Today, she's going to summarize some of the areas that she covers in the SEO best practice guide for PR. And then we're going to open it up to your questions. Now, some of you may be relatively new to the topic, and others may be more experienced. So I'm sure we're going to get a great range of questions, but please don't be shy. And can you ask your questions using the Q&A function, please? And we'll cover off as many as we can at the end. So thanks for joining us, Judith, and I'm going to hand seamlessly over to you.
Fantastic. Well, this is the part of the webinar where I go and I share my screen and we start the presentation so that you can see it and I can see it, hopefully. And what I'll do is I'll just introduce myself because you've done a fantastic job, but I always say you can Google me. Oh, look at that. It goes so fast. You can Google me, but I've worked across a number of different companies, but I have worked with PRs. And I think that's why I could write this guide, is because I've been both sides of the desk, so to speak. I've been in SEO and I've worked with PRs who are looking to SEOs to see what they're doing in order to do better. So this is what I'm going to cover, and I put a link to the guide because we're really plugging the guide. It's free. It's free. It's what, 13,000 words, I think, something like that. It's huge. But it means that it covers a lot. And I have been looking online at other guides that are out there for free, and some of them actually give you incorrect information. So the concern that I have with some of the guides that are out there is the information in them is incorrect. And one of the ones that we were looking at when I was looking at doing this guide and seeing what was out there actually had incorrect information about how Google works and how Google uses keywords in content. So I wanted to make sure that I covered these off for you, for all of you today. And really just to try to explain this to you in a more simpler way so that when you approach the guide, it doesn't feel as overwhelming as it can sometimes feel doing this kind of work. Now, the most important thing, I think, for all PR professionals and really all business professionals, so this is for you doing your own stuff for your own website or doing stuff for a client website, because you know it's never just the one, right? I know that the cobbler's children have no shoes, so if you look at my website, it is unoptimized, and I think it's broken on mobile too, because that's just how I roll. But we do need to think about these things sometimes, and if there's downtime, and I know we've just been through a pandemic, and so you know, we're all ramping back up. I've got Christmas and July invitations coming through for my foodie blog, so I know that PR is ramping back up in those areas. Charity PR absolutely ramping back up, and so lots of different areas of PR are ramping back up, so you might not have downtime. But if you do, I would love for one of the projects that you take on outside of client projects to be improving your own websites and increasing your visibility for your own websites. Now, how does Google work? Google, we tend to use some words that are English words that, of course, sound like we're talking English, but when the sentence comes together, it it doesn't make sense to most English language speakers. And so we talk about spiders and indices or indexes and this and that and the other thing, and it can be quite isolating. It can push you outside of your experience and make you just switch off. So please don't switch off. I'm going to try to explain all these concepts for you, and hopefully at the end of it you'll be like, yes, to the client, I can tell you what's going on with your website. It's not spiderable. We're going to help you with that, and we're also going to make sure that you're visible across the web. So what happens? How is a website found by Google? Well, Google lets loose a bank of computers, most of which are buried under the desert somewhere in the US, I believe, it's for cooling. You know, it's much cooler down there. They cool down the cores. Google is very eco-friendly. They work really hard to improve their efficiency. So their spiders are banks of computers that connect to other computers. They're not crawling. They're not doing anything active. They don't click links. They don't click lightbox links. They don't tell you that they're over 18 when they get to your wine website. So the computers make connections with other computers. And the way that SEOs refer to that is we say that we're crawling the web. Now, the spider finds the website. So the computer makes a connection with another page, generally from a link. So if you've got a link from the New York Times, or I'm Canadian, if you've got a link from the National Post or the, Globe and Mail, hey, hi, Ken, hey, Dad, then this is going to be a good thing because Google can then find your page through that link. But also, once it finds you, it can also use the links you have inside of your website to find other pages. So that's how it finds the web, is through links. Later, I'll mention that links are 40% of what Google uses to assess the value of a page. So super important, but also just for discovery. If you put out a press release or if your client launches a new product, but it's not linked to internally, it's actually going to be really challenging for Google to reward that page and make it visible to somebody who might hear about it on the radio, who might see it on a TV advert, or who might just ambiently hear about it through news. They're going to have a difficult time to find it outside of a direct link if it's orphaned, if there's no links coming into it from the site itself. So when your client goes live with stuff, that's one of the things you can check. How do I as a user find that page? Now, once that happens, once Google finds it, it scrapes that content, and I know that's a bad word, scraping. We don't like it when people scrape things, usually because they're trying to cheat. And they're trying to steal our content and publish it elsewhere. But trust me on this, it's Google, so it's good, right? Yeah, we'll stick with that line for now. So Google scrapes all your content, copies all of your content, but it does it for good reasons. It places it into an archive, places it into a big database. It does some computational analysis on that database because it kind of has to. It's a bunch of math. There's not really much else that it can do. There's a lot of math that it does on that page about the words, the links, everything. And then what it does is it figures out what that page is relevant for using math and displays search results when someone types in a word. So it's a really complex concept, but really all it comes down to is a computer shakes the hand of another computer and says, hey, I'm here. And the other computer, your website, says, hey, how's it going? I am A-OK. That's a 200 response. And Google says, give me all the things. And your website gives them all the things. It dumps it into an archive. It does some analysis, and boom, that's how search results are displayed. So if you understand the fundamentals of that, when something goes wrong, you can actually look back at this process and see where it might be broken. So that's how Google works. And oh, look at that. I love it when my computer does this. It like places some of the text over other texts so that it makes it difficult to read. So you have to go to SlideShare and get the way awesome deck on SlideShare at the end. But this is a slide that just summarizes what it is, what we're talking about when we talk about spiders. It's just a computer. It can't do anything. It can't even click on a light box. So if you disrupt your content and you don't let people see it until they fill in an age because you're working with an alcohol client, that's an issue for Google. And there's technical ways around that, but it's a little outside of the scope of this. Now, as I said before, the spider deposits everything into an index, and I just gave you some bullet points here about how it works. And then we have the final formula that is calculated, and we deliver the search results at the end. I think I've loaded the wrong deck up, but that's okay, because we'll just fly with it. So how do we align PR and strategy? Or, Michelle, you're going to have to tell me now, would you like me to stop?
Well, I think let's just go back to the algorithm, if that's okay.
Yep, let me stop sharing and we can talk about the algorithm.
So you flashed up that there were 200 plus factors, and you do go into this into more detail in the guide as well. Yep. But for those who are watching who either know a little bit about the algorithm, or for those who know much more, and for those who have any sort of secret sauce behind it, can you explain a bit more around what the algorithm is and what the sort of the key elements are and have been that have been consistent for the longest period of time? Because I think there is this sort of maybe a preconception around SEO that we're sort of constantly chasing for these little kind of angles, and one thing happens in the algorithm and then everything completely changes. Actually, you know, having spoken to you for a number of years, the reality is that actually fundamental things haven't really changed that much. So maybe if you can talk about the algorithm in broad terms, and then if people have questions, then again, please put them in the Q&A box. But let's just pause on the algorithm.
Yeah, and there are more slides, so there's a better explanation in this
Excellent.
deck that I'm just pulling up now. So the algorithm, it's, as I said, it's math, but it breaks into 3 fundamental pillars. Aha, we have the right one here. So it breaks into 3 fundamental pillars, and what those are, as I mentioned, links. And links can mean anything. So links can be links from an outside website, or they can be links on your own website. And the links on your own website are super important for Google finding things once it finds you, because sometimes it finds you through outside links, but a lot of the times it finds you through inside links. So right now I'm working with a client where they've actually got a lack of internal links, so there's no traffic to anywhere. So from a PR point of view, as I said, if somebody launches something and it's what we call an orphan page, there are no links to it anywhere, Google does not reward that, because links, so those connections into the page, are super important. The next thing that's very important is the content of the page itself. And in the deck, I actually go into some detail. So in the next few slides, not quite the next few, but after that, the next few slides, I've got details on how we put content, keywords in content. And I've actually got some tips that I will be putting on SlideShare in the deck. So the deck that goes on SlideShare will have these tips on how you, as a PR professional, can help your client optimize their content that you're then promoting externally. So if you're pushing people back at a research piece or a landing page that's for lead generation or anything like that, what you can do is push your client, not push, maybe cajole, gently suggest to your client that they work in a particular way, and that is the tips that I'm about to give you a little further down in the deck. And then the third element is technical. Now, in the guide that I give you, I do go into technical stuff a little bit, just so that you as a PR professional can tell your client if a piece of content that you've pushed out there is not doing well on your client site, let's say, is you pushed out there is not doing well, what you can do is look at some of the tips that we've given you in the guide in order to understand better what's actually possibly going wrong there. So it's those 3 things, those 3 pillars, which we do actually cover in the deck in some detail, are the big things that are important as far as SEO. And in the guide, they're all covered. So there's another impetus for you to download the guide. Now, of course, my embarrassment is going to be recorded for all to see. And what I'm going to do is now share my screen again with this different deck. And of course, I should have realized when the deck did not give me an error that, of course, it had to be the wrong deck because nothing ever runs smoothly. So as it didn't give me an error, I should have realized that it wasn't the right deck. But here's the deck now.
You were waiting for a 404 error. You're so Google that
I know.
when you
Well,
don't get
I was
those
more
signs.
waiting for the 302 of a temporary redirect to a font size and style that I didn't have.
Fantastic. Well, you styled it out very well. Back over to you, Judith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And apologies for the wrong deck there. You're going to get the sexy complete deck in the slide share. So what do we need to do to align our PR and SEO strategy? And thank you, Michelle, for deftly drawing us into a discussion of the algorithm, which is really important and is in the guide. Now, one of the things that we should be doing as PR professionals with each other is to look at, look, I love the way that this has just moved all of my blanking off, is to look at our competition. So what I was hoping not to show you is I looked at Vuelio, but I've deliberately manipulated the results here. And I'm sorry, Michelle, I deliberately manipulated the results here so that I had to scroll down to find stuff they didn't rank for. Now, it was difficult. So you might find that I have cheated, and I used a search on this, and female comedian is clearly something that you don't want to rank for. I have cheated, and I have done a little bit of a search on Semrush here, and this is Semrush output, to only show stuff that you're not ranking for. And you can see it's not really super relevant stuff like, is YouTube social media is not necessarily something that Vuelio wants to be ranking for, because that's not right. And American female comedians, again, not something that you want to be ranking for. So you can see that I have cheated here in order to make it look more dramatic than it was looking, because you were ranking top for so many things. I had to do something. You were looking too good. I had to do something to make you to make it look more dramatic here for the presentation effect. So what you can see here is the way that Semrush does this is you can manipulate it to show you what you're not ranking for. And you can see here where the dots are, where the lines are, that those are keywords. So obviously not, most of them not what you want to be ranking for, but there are keywords in there that no one is ranking for. So social media calendar, again, not necessarily something that you want to be ranking for. But if you were, let's say, working with clients, and you were working with clients on their social media calendars, and that's something you wanted to rank for, you could see that your competitors weren't ranking for it, and that's somewhere that you can go. But you could also go in and see that what's happening is you're not ranking for something that everybody else is. So unfortunately, I couldn't find anything like that, or fortunately, for Vuelio and the other competitors up here, but that's a good thing because it means that Vuelio as a website is actually ranking, and very well, against what other people are ranking for. So I didn't want to show that. I wanted to show where gaps were and where you could identify gaps. So let's say one of your clients was a female comedian. Now you would know that only one of your competitors is actually ranking for female comedian, and not very well. So if you were representing a female comedian, you could actually see this as a gap that you could fill in. Now, that story looks much better when you can't see the domains that I'm looking at here, but you can see that there are lots of opportunities out there to rank for stuff that you don't rank for that other people might rank for, and it could give you ideas on what to write about. Let's say that you're an agency that talks about social media a lot more than other people, and you go in and you look at your competition and you're like, well, actually, they're talking about this other topic that we're not talking about. You can use Semrush to identify what they're talking about that you're not talking about. So just think about it that way. You can see what other people are ranking for that you're not ranking for. And that's the beauty of competitor keyword analysis in Semrush, which is what this is. This tool is just Semrush. And you can get an individual solo, I think it's called solo account for Semrush, and you can put anyone you want in there, and you can see what they're ranking for, and you can use filters to only look at some things. So if you're only interested in keywords around alcohol, or if you're only interested in keywords around women's clothing, or if you're only interested in keywords around luxury, you can do that. You can filter it so that you're only looking at that, and you can see where the competition's ranking, and you aren't. Can't hide anything from us. especially when your little cover-ups don't work. But you can't hide anything from an SEO. You cannot hide anything from us, including where you've gotten coverage. So again, this was a deliberate manipulation. What I can do in this tool is I can look at the backlinks from other people got, and I can say, only show me opportunities to get something where I haven't got it yet. So I can actually say, what have other people gotten links? Where have other people gotten links from? And a lot of this is actually quite low quality, unfortunately, but I can say, in this case, it's low quality, but in other cases, it could be good quality. So I said, where has Vuelio not gotten a link that other people have? And so, unfortunately, it's a little bit spammy. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not passing judgment. I'm not being judgmental. It's just perhaps not necessarily links that you would spend your time, which is your client's money, on getting. But in other cases, you might find places where competition have links that you don't. So I just picked one close to the top. The AS is an internal score that Semrush uses. And you can see here that you've got the option to actually open up what links they are. So I can see that these are sponsored, Instagram post price will fall. I can see that's a press release. It's gone out probably on a wire. It's been automatically syndicated. And so that's all good. You know, it's gone out. It's gotten on to Business Insider through syndication. It's fine. It's a link that Vuelio hasn't yet got. So, you know, but not necessarily something they want. However, if you've got a client and you're looking at the client's competition, you can filter out where the competitors have links that you don't. So that means you might be able to find a small publication that you were not possibly previously aware of, or you can say to the journalist, I see that you have covered X, Y, and Z in the past. Here is my client. They're doing something even better. So you can do that kind of thing with this type of a backlink analysis. This is Semrush. You can also do this kind of thing with Vuelio, and you can actually go in and you can look at where other people have things happening in keywords with Pulsar. You can look at conversational topics. The tools are amazing. You just have to give yourself the time to use them. So this is perfect for outreach, for working with a client, look at their competition, see where the competition have gotten links from that you haven't, and find the quality in there and approach them. So it's absolutely fantastic from that, and it's really straightforward. Now, I did say in the guide, I talk about how to look at and fix certain things that are happening on your website. So we've got here, find and fix keyword cannibalization. Now, what does that mean? It does sound kind of horrid, cannibalization. It has a root of cannibal, and cannibal is not something that we want to be involved in. But what that means is when you have a page that is trying to rank for the same thing as other pages. Now, I recently helped a PR agency fix their, well, we're still working on it, but we're fixing their website because so many of their pages were targeting the exact same keywords. What does that mean? Every single one of those instances of what they were trying to rank for, let's say you're working in food PR. So, because I love chocolate and wine, and that's food, or alcohol, let's say luxury wine, Burgundy. Let's say you were luxury wine PR. Now, if you were this other PR agency, they had luxury wine PR, for example. They didn't, it's a different vertical, but they would have had luxury wine PR in 6 different pages. Now, it means all of those 6 pages are competing with each other. And remember, it's links as well as content, as well as technical. So they were trying to rank on 6 different pages of their own website for the same keyword, and they were competing against everybody else. Now, if you think about the links point of view, if we only have one page that is supposed to rank for luxury wine PR, then all the links about luxury wine PR go into one page. Otherwise, there's some to this page, some to that page, some to another page. It's scattered, it's distributed, so it's not as straightforward as we would hope it would be. So that's one of the reasons why we, as SEOs, like to fix keyword cannibalization, is links then go to the one true version of that page, and only one page should rank for that. Now, this is an example from Semrush. So in Semrush, SEMrush, You can see here where technically we have issues. And you can see these pages are all trying to rank for similar things. And so this is where we're going to try to fix it and make it better and stop trying to rank for, in this case, I think Advent calendar on 2 pages and coffee on another 2 pages. So we're going to try to fix it. Now, it might not be you that has to fix it, but if it's your website, and remember, I want you to go out there and spend some time on your own website after this. So I would really love it if even like a 1/10 of you went off and tried to fix your own websites. So take a look. If you can get Semrush, if you can afford it, for the solo version. The solo version is the least expensive version. And look at the technical side of your website and just see if you can fix that a little bit so you're only targeting one thing. That would be fantastic. I would love to hear back from 10% of you saying, yes, Judith, after your webinar, I downloaded the white paper and I fixed my website. So please do. Please think about these things. Now, another thing that we can do is we can actually look to see what pages we have in Google search results by using this search. Now, what will this tell you? It will tell you if for some reason the whole site is blocked or if there's something that Google isn't seeing. So you can see here that Vuelio has 4,740 pages in the search results. Now, if we were, let's say, a huge site of 100,000 pages, we'd know that there was something wrong. If we were a tiny site of 200 pages, we would be, I think maybe we have a duplicate content problem here. But we know that this is actually very closely aligned with what we expect to see in the search results. So this is good. But what this does is it enables us to see if there is a problem. Now, what tools besides Semrush, which I seem to have done nothing but been an advert for so far, what other tools do we actually need for our success? Now, there are a lot of things that I would love to see you guys, to see everybody working with, and love to see being used more, but there are certain tools that we need in order to understand what's going on from Google's point of view. Now, from Google's point of view, I think this image, when I looked at it earlier, it was slightly misaligned. So, oh no, it's a later slide, but bear with me. There's a picture that's a little misaligned, but I'm going to talk you through it. Now, tools. This is a lot of words. I know it's a lot of words, and please don't read it right now. You can download the slides from SlideShare for free. You'll get the whole guide for free. Just, sign in, sign up, leave your details. You get to download the whole guide. It is not something where you're going to be charged £1,000 for or anything. But these tools are listed in the guide. Now, Ahrefs is like Semrush, so both of those tools fulfill similar functions, and they work in similar ways. But let's say you needed to do some research for a new product and understand what people were talking about when they talked about this product. Keywordtool.io is one of the tools that you can use because it shows you what people are searching for. Now, Google Search Console is for technical stuff more than anything, but if you're looking at your own website, please make sure that you have validated your website for Google Search Console. It is different from Google Analytics, and it will help you see so much about how Google sees your site. So please, if you haven't got Google Search Console validated for your site, at the end of this webinar, please go off and just check that and get it validated. It will be the best thing you ever do. There are some other tools like Rank Tracker, which will help you monitor keywords if you're launching a new product, and SEO Monitor, which will help you monitor keywords if you're launching a new product. You can also see here the essential tools like Pulsar, which I've already mentioned, and I really love as far as understanding the conversation that's happening, because conversations change constantly in social media and in search. So this is an excellent tool to understand that. Response Source, which I myself have used because it is an excellent, service, and it's an excellent product. And Vuelio, which is something that I've been aware of for many, 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 many years. And I think it is essential from a PR point of view for managing things. But I'm going to talk about that later too. So I did a very dash through everything. So Ahrefs and Semrush do work in similar ways. Semrush have just rebranded, but you can see here I've used chocolate because I love chocolate. I love ethical chocolate, so Montezuma's, Green and Black's, linked source from great places. But do you see those bubbles there, the Venn diagram? What that tells me is Hotel Chocolat is targeting a huge range of keywords that nobody else is. But I can also see that Thornton's is targeting a massive amount of keywords that Hotel Chocolat isn't. So here is where we can see visually the keyword gap, and this is something you can do for yourself in your own agency or inside your own business. So if you're inside of a company and you're looking at your company's competitors, or if you're in an agency and you're looking at your agency's competitors or competitors for your client inside of the agency, you can give them this really brilliant visualization of where the gaps are. It is fantastic for that. I always say this is the best way that you can see how much of an opportunity there is for excellent targeted content to target the people that you want to be speaking to. Google Search Console isn't for competitive auditing. It is only for your internal use. So this is from my blog, sorry, but it is only ever for your own website. So I could not use someone else's data. So I have exposed my own data here for my own website. And so you can see the keywords here that I'm ranking for. Now, why is this important? If your company or your agency are not ranking for the keywords that you think you should be, this is where you're going to see that. You're going to see them missing from this. So Semrush will show you not everything. Google Search Console will show you everything you're ranking for. So I'm not entirely sure why I'm ranking for biscuit brandy. I have never talked about a brandy that tastes like biscuits, but it's something that people are searching for, and it's something that I rank well for, and it's something that I haven't written about it, but maybe there is a new biscuit brandy on the market. So maybe I should be thinking about that. So you can see here, we can see what your website is ranking for, but we can't see the gaps. So for the gaps, we use Semrush. For the actual things that you're ranking for, we use Google Search Console. So that's why this is so important for you to look at. Now, with Google Search Console, I definitely think that there are a number of things that we need to be thinking about, but there are so many things that we need to be targeting. So one of the things that we need to be targeting is keywords, right? And I've spoken about keywords. Now, with keywords, we want to not only think about what we're missing, but what is actually relevant for us. So one of the things that I'll be sharing with you in the deck that's up on, will be up on SlideShare, is something about EAT, or expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Now, EAT, and it's a better explained in the guide than it is anywhere else, but it is a way of demonstrating to Google that your client or you are the expert in the topic. So remember earlier I was talking about luxury wine PR. So let's say you were selling Burgundian wines and you were a luxury wine PR. How do you have any expertise in that area? And this is what Google search raters, there are actual people that will come along and they will look at this on your website or on your client's website. And they will look to see what's going on with regards to if you know what you're talking about. So how do you demonstrate that to Google? Now, I apologize, I don't have a how do you explain this to Google in the SlideShare. However, I do in the guide. So it's the perfect way to look at the guide. It's a perfect reason to download the guide, and it's the perfect way to understand what Google is looking for. And of course, Google is one of the main ones we target. Bing is obviously very important, and it's incredibly useful to have optimized content for Google because it will work for Bing. But Bing doesn't necessarily have human beings that go off and do searches, whereas Google does. So where Google has human beings that come up and look at stuff, we need to make sure that those human beings are finding what they need. And in the guide, I haven't done it in the deck that's on SlideShare, but in the guide, I do have a listing of things that you need to be thinking about in order to prove your expertise. So let's say you're a WSET level 3 or a WSET diploma or a Master of Wine, and that's why you're writing about luxury wine. In those cases, you need to just prove that you have this expertise for Google. Trust, how can Google trust that you know what you're talking about? I'm working with a cancer charity right now. How does Google know that this cancer charity is giving correct information about chemotherapy and COVID-19? A friend of mine, stage 4 terminal cancer. Where does she go? Who has legitimate information? That's authoritativeness. So with what authority are you writing this? Now, there are trust marks and things like that that you can use, but the authorship of the content can help you prove that. And I go through that in the guide as well. And then trustworthiness, how does Google trust you? Generally, it's through something like, and I do show this in the guide, like an About Us page, and you'll see that in the guide. I've got screenshots and everything. It's not in the slide share. It's just in the guide, but it's the perfect way in the guide to run through things. Now, obviously, when we're looking at keyword gaps and when we're looking at things where we have keywords and we're not really ranking as well as we should be. Let's say I genuinely did have something about a biscuit flavored brandy. How do I show that to people who are searching? I don't, but if I did, how would I show that? Well, I would want to optimize my content. And again, this is in the guide. So I go through this step by step for you in the guide on what you need to do. You need to adjust your title tags. And this is something that I've gone through with this PR agency as well. The title tag is able to change the ranking of a page. Yes. With the title tag, I can change, and you can change, the ranking of a page. So you must be very careful about how you title a page. In the guide, you'll see that I go through this completely, but you must be very careful about how you title a page because you can change the ranking of that page. So that page, you could actually change the ranking of it if you don't do it correctly. And also, we need to be thinking about how we're compelling people. So if I did have a biscuit brandy, how am I compelling people to click? What am I doing to make them want to click? The description of the page is part of what I do to make them want to click, but that's not all. We need to also be thinking about what we're saying to Google. So what is our headline? What is our content? It's not just about what we're saying to journalists anymore, but when we're putting it up on the website, when we're putting that press release up on the website, when we're putting that content up on the website, that new release up on the website, what are we doing to show Google as well as people that this is the content that they want to be reading? And it's all about, in the guide, you'll see it broken down, and it will go through step by step in the guide that you need to be thinking about the title tag, the meta description, and everything else in it. So you really need to be thinking about the meta description, the title tag, and the content and everything like that. So those sorts of things are the things that Google looks for. But what about keywords and content? You know, we know where the keyword gap is. We know what keywords we're ranking for. But what is the next step? What we need to be thinking about is how we actually create that content. So we only ever need to use the keyword once. And I do go through this in the guide, but please don't just, and I don't have slides on this either. I'm pretty sure I put this in the guide. You only ever need to use your target keyword once. So, and not one page per keyword, one page per topic. You only ever need to use it once. So if I have a biscuit brandy, I only ever need to mention that it's a biscuit brandy once. After that, I can talk about grapes. I can talk about maceration. I can talk about flavor elements. I can talk about casks. I can talk about anything. Maybe they actually ground up biscuits and put it in. I don't know how a biscuit brandy might be made. Probably barrel aging rather than biscuits, because that would add fat. But, you know, whatever it is, you want to be thinking about the words that support the main keyword. Please don't just think that all you have to do is stuff the page with the same word over and over again and you'll rank. You will not rank. You won't rank, and you could get a penalty out of it. So please, you only ever have to use your target once, and then never again. You just write naturally. And I hope I've gotten that point across in the guide. I'm sorry that I don't have slides that say that specifically, but I have said this lots. Please write naturally. You can see here where the gap is, but the gaps on keywords are about individual keywords but not topics. So you can see the top opportunities, box of chocolate bars. if you're writing a page about box of chocolate bars, please, please, please don't just write about box of chocolate bars. Please, over and over, please write along things that sound natural. Now, of course, when we push things out to media, we want to be making sure we're thinking about these things, but we also want to make sure that we're crafting the right compelling verbiage for a journalist. And the journalists have their fingers on the pulse of what people are saying. So if you've got, okay, that was an unintended pun, but if you've got your finger on the pulse of what people are talking about, then you've got your content in Pulsar. Okay, yes, don't give up the day job, Judith. Pulsar is great for understanding what people are talking about, and then you can reflect that to the media when you're putting out a response for a journalist. So when a journalist questions like, what are the best luxury wines in Burgundy? You can reflect what people are actually talking about in your response to the journalist and in everything that you reflect back to the journalist. So you can see here a journalist inquiry. I've written these because I have a blog, so I'm very used to this format. You've seen these because as a PR, I'm hoping you are using a service. So you can see this type of email coming through, and you can see that when we as bloggers or journalists are looking for information, we're saying particular things, but it's quite pithy. If you're a dermatologist in this example, you want to make sure that when you're giving the quote through, you're using language people are using and not just using internal jargony speak, because that's what people will respond to and that's what journalists will respond to. So we always need to be thinking about these things, these topics that people are talking about, not just individual keywords, also when we're responding to journalists. Now, I've mentioned this a lot of times. I love this tool. I've obviously used it more on the other side as a blogger rather than as a PR professional, but there is no way that you could ever, well, there probably is, but you'd go slightly mad. No way you could ever keep all of this information straight without something like Vuelio so that you can track things. You've responded to a PR request from a journalist. You know, you want to be thinking about all of these things, but you also want to be having a place that you can put all of your information, and this is it. And I know as a blogger as well that if you're not on these services, you're not on anyone's radar, but this is a perfect place to keep everything for everyone. And you know what their visibility score is, well, their Vuelio score is. So how visible are they on the internet? What are they doing? What kind of keywords are they ranking for? How are they performing? You know, stuff in Semrush that you have to pull from 6 different sources, and then you have to use 2 other tools to get this information. It's all right here in one single dashboard. So I know I sound like a little bit of a commercial, but it's only because it really does work. And if you're not doing it this way, you have like, please don't use Moz's rankings, but you only have like a domain something like either from Majestic or Moz or something like that, which are flawed calculations, and you're kind of guessing, and maybe the journalist or the blogger looks really good on paper, but if you'd go into Vuelio, if you had this view, you would see it wasn't quite well aligned for you. So this is absolutely invaluable from saving you time, and time is money. And then I've mentioned it a lot, Pulsar. I absolutely loved Pulsar when I saw it presented to me. I haven't had a chance to use it, but I feel like if I really wanted to up my game, then I would be using Pulsar, because the way that it just structures everything and organizes the topics and the information that's out there into an easily consumable format is so important. So absolutely love this. And now we're into the questions part. And I can see that there's some things in the Q&A already. So
yeah, there are. And please, I would encourage everybody to ask questions. I just want to say, Judith, it sounds like you've got a brand new catchphrase. It's in the guide. Thank you so much. I mean, we asked you to almost to do something impossible, which was to distill some of the key elements from the guide into, a few minutes. But just to say that you do go into a lot of detail around things like tags, meta descriptions, title tags. You talk about link building. You talk about many different things. And also, as you say, you talk about Google's EAT, which really is sort of the fundamentals and the principles of getting I think you're thinking and your strategy right for SEO and aligning that to public relations as well. I'm going to start with Georgina, because actually she has two questions in one question. So, and they were aligned to a couple of things that I wanted to ask as well. So the first thing is, when you're building links, okay, and when you get coverage, there's a lot of discussion around follow and no follow. So do follow and no follow links. What are the differences between the two? And actually, is there any impact from no follow links? So that would be the first question. And then we'll do the second part of Georgina's question afterwards.
So follow versus no follow.
Mm-hmm.
They are technical attributions that are put on a link, and it's a little bit more code techy, but don't be put off by it. It's a checkbox in WordPress. So if you're working with bloggers, and I know a lot of people work with influencers now, an influencer or a blogger can put they can select the check mark, and that will make all of their links on their blog no follow. What does that mean? It tells Google not to pass any points from the origin page to the destination page. Now, I realize I sound like a broken record, but it's because the guide is 13,000 words, and so it goes into a lot more detail than I can. But in the guide, you'll see that there are the two different types of links are follow and no follow. And the follow one passes points, and the no follow one does not pass any points. However, from a human point of view, it doesn't matter whether it's a follow or no follow. It is a link, and that enables someone to go from where they are to where your client's information is or your information is. So I love links. I obviously would prefer a follow link because it helps with ranking, but I will accept a follow or no follow link because we're pushing our clients or our company's information and details out there, and so any link is good because it draws the readers back to our websites.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. So the second part of Georgina's question is around social media. Both you and I love it. We exist on it. And the question is, from an SEO perspective, do social media posts on Instagram, Facebook, etc., impact Google rankings? And actually, I'd extend this question a little bit more because there are quite a lot of closed networks out there. For example, Facebook groups, guild groups, those kind of things. Does this have any impact on search visibility and search rankings at all?
Now, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool SEO. I've been in SEO for over 20 years. I was in SEO before Google because there were search engines before Google. I know it's hard to believe, but I am that old. And I think the problem is that with links, people's perception of links is that all links help Google rankings. But in my opinion, all links help people. And that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, in closed ecosystems like Facebook, like Guild, links in there don't necessarily impact on Google's rankings. But when someone is talking a lot about something and there are links being shared a lot, whether they're shared through Guild, through WhatsApp, through Facebook, through Instagram, they will reach a critical point after which people will start to blog and write about them, and journalists may pick up on this ambient noise, and then they'll actually publish something with either a no-follow or a follow link. It doesn't matter which. When that happens, then Google will possibly increase the ranking of that page because what's happening is we're increasing the perceived relevance of that page to that topic, even though a no-follow link says to not pass any points. It still helps Google contextualize what a target page is about. And if Google was struggling up to that point and then somebody blogs, even if it's a no-follow link, then it will instantly help Google understand it better. And that means that it could increase in rankings simply because Google understands it better. So it's a really complicated answer. The easy answer is no, it doesn't have an effect, but I still love them.
Brilliant. And actually extended on, this is a question from me, and I will take some other questions, and please do get them in because we've got another 10 minutes for them. In the same way that, social media posts do not necessarily have that massive impact on SEO, do citations in media coverage online actually have any impact at all? I.e. your company, your brand, your organization, or maybe your spokespeople are mentioned, but there isn't a link.
It does help. So a citation where there's no link but a mention is incredibly important for Google, because the more of those that you get, the more the increase of perception that Google has that there is something important about that company or that organization going on, and it increases the words around the company, increases the relevance of that company name to those pieces of content. So what's happening is Google is seeing the word that is a brand, and it recognizes the brand usually because it's usually in a URL or something similar, and then it looks at the words around that co-citation. So it looks at the words around the brand, and it increases the relevance of those words for that brand. So even with no link whatsoever, Google is already recalculating what that brand is possibly relevant for. Now, it doesn't have as big an impact as when we get a link. A link is the key, but it does increase Google's perceived relevance of those keywords to the brand and how popular the brand is. So the more popular a brand is, it's update Vince many years ago, and then since then there have been other updates. So if you wanted to go to the search engine of your choice, it doesn't have to be Google, and ask that search engine what update Vince was, you'll see that it's all about brand and rewarding brands. So the better that you can establish a brand, the better it is, and citations are part of that, because not everybody gives you a link. If everybody gives you a link, it looks artificial. If some people don't and some people do, then it looks much more natural, and Google is more likely to trust it. Therefore, if you get a citation, so if you get a mention with no link, it's good and it does help Google.
Brilliant. And that's a great summary, because, you know, the reality is in comms and PR, we're in the reputation business. And actually, if you think about Google as a reputation engine, it's just looking for these signals all of the time, isn't it? So links are fantastic. Citations are still breadcrumbs, and they kind of feed the Google reputation machine. So that's very encouraging for us. We've got a question around internal links. So you talked at the start about the importance of internal links on your website, kind of talking to each other in the right way. The very first question that came up was what's the best way to add internal links to your website, and what do they look like?
Yes, I realized that there was nothing in the deck. So I'm sorry, there won't be anything on SlideShare for you, but, and I hate to sound like a broken record, in the guide, there is a little bit more detail and information about what an internal link looks like. Basically, all that is on your own website, whether it's your company's website, your agency's website, or your client's website. You link from one page to another page. So you might say on the home page or on a landing page about, I'll stick with luxury wine. I don't know why my head's there. It's obviously very early for wine. But if we think about a luxury wine PR or a luxury PR, if you have a landing page about your luxury PR offering, and you offer it for wine, for perfume, for motor vehicles, the internal links would be wine, motor vehicles, perfume, etc. So if you had landing pages for those, you would link to them from that category landing page of luxury PR. So you'd have a luxury PR landing page and then links to a page that talks about your wine, your luxury wine PR offering, and your luxury motor vehicle PR offering, and your luxury perfume PR offering, and maybe some case studies that are specifically for wine or specifically for perfume. So though that's an internal link, is from the category landing page of luxury PR to the specific landing page, which I'm assuming is a different page, for luxury wine. That is an internal link going from one page of your website to another page. The best kind of internal link is one that's in text, so like I've just described, but it also helps Google to have internal links in breadcrumbs. Now, breadcrumbs can be added to a WordPress site with just a plugin, so it's not a complicated ad. But of course, always talk to your devs before you do something like that. So talk to whoever built your website before popping random plugins in, please, because some of them will inject links into your site, which is a recent thing that just came out in my industry, is that there was a series of tools that were injecting links into people's websites. And that was how suddenly specific websites were ranking much better, is because this plugin was injecting links. So please be careful, but you can get a breadcrumb generator for your website, and that's internal links for Google. So there are many ways to create internal links: menus, breadcrumbs, and internal content links. But those are all ones that just go to your website and not off to somebody else's.
So I think that in part answers Georgia's question that came in, which is, what would you suggest to a PR agency that wants to expand an area of their business that they don't have authority and visibility on, but have visibility in an area that they want to do less of? So I think some of the things that you're talking about in terms of internal linking, that would have an impact. Is there anything else that you would suggest to Georgia from a practical perspective, from an SEO perspective, that they would need to consider?
It's always difficult when you want to get out of an industry or an area because you're either known too much for it or something else has gone wrong, and you've decided that you want to exit that. Maybe it's too much emotionally, or it's just the wrong alignment, or you're grown as an agency and you want to change. So I would always say that don't delete that completely, because it's a good way to bridge to something else. It depends on how divergent they are. If you're going from pharmaceutical PR to wine PR, it's quite a jump, and it's quite an exit. So in something like that, I might do something technical with the site. So I might no-index the page, and that again on a WordPress site, WordPress built site, it's just a checkbox, and you can just check the box to say to the website and to say to Google, please don't index this page any longer, and it will drop out of Google and Bing and Yandex and Baidu and any other website that you or search engine you happen to be in. They all follow this directive. And then when you're building up the new product or the new offering, from your home page, I would have an above the fold, so on the as close to the top as you can, link to the new service and say, please see our new service offering in luxury wine or in pharmaceuticals, if you're going from luxury wine to pharmaceuticals rather than from pharmaceuticals to something else, So whatever it is, homepage. And the reason for above the fold is because of how Google analyzes the page. I don't remember if this is in the guide. The guide is huge. And I know I sound like an advert for the guide, but 13,000 words, you can get a lot of detail in. So the guide is huge, but the guide will give you detailed information on how I look at a page and how Google looks at a page. So above the fold, so above where the screen cuts off, is where Google actually looks, so it can actually tell. And so you want to have the link up there because Google will value it more. So as you're launching this new thing, just pop that link above the fold on the home page, and it will cascade all the value, because the home page is usually the strongest, to the new service offering, and that will bump up the rankings more quickly.
Fantastic. Judith, we're nearly out of time, but I am going to ask you a question around the latest Google update. Okay, so we talked about the algorithm and how Google has 200 plus factors, etc. But from time to time, it has these things called core updates. So to finish off the session today, can you tell us anything that you know about the latest Google core update that everybody who has attended today should take away something from? So what are your kind of tips around the latest Google core update?
So one of the things around the latest Google core update is that it focuses a lot on expertise, authority, and trust, which I mentioned, and is actually really deeply explained in the guide. And we have a link to the guidelines that Google quality raters use in the guide. So it's a really complex area, and I know I sort of touched on it really briefly, but it's all about how you demonstrate this to Google, and Google is tweaking those dials and really bumping up the emphasis that it's placing on demonstrated expertise and authoritativeness, which is finding mentions about how you are on other sites. So PR is all about establishing EAT, and the latest Google update is actually increasing its valuing of EAT now. We do have 2 more updates coming, so this will change over time. And I have seen that clients of mine are fluctuating. They're going up, they're going down, they're going up, they're going down. It's like a roller coaster, and I don't like roller coasters. So right now, the algorithm update does still seem to be finding its level balance, and I am seeing more US search results in the UK, so I'm thinking it's still rolling out. But this core update is really focused on quality. So in the guide, we have links off to the Google Quality Raters guidelines and also an explanation about EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. So you can get the guide, and there's much more detail than we go into here. But also later in this month, we are going to, and it's been a long announced update to speed. I think I have something on speed in the guide, but basically if your website is not fast and it does not pass Core Vitals, you will lose out to other people who do. So Google will rate you against your competitors in the search results, and you will go down if other people are faster and more efficient at delivering a web experience to people. So Core Web Vitals is later this month, and then in July we have another core update coming. So this one was about more about quality, and the next 2 are going to be about landing page experience and then more on quality.
Fantastic. That's a great summary. I'm afraid that time has come upon us. And also look at this rather strange halo that I have as well from my upstairs skylight. Apologies to everyone if your question didn't get answered. As Judith has said repeatedly, there's so much in the guide, and I hope that it's in there for you. So please do download it. You will find it on the Vuelio website, and also there's a link in the chat as well. We've recorded this session, so do come back. You'll get an email if you've registered, and also we're going to be writing a blog post tomorrow. We will ensure that we will link to this session and also the guide as well. So look out for that. Watch it again. Look out for the recording. Look in our resources section of our website as well. Thank you all for your time today. Thanks for coming in and asking questions about SEO, which does feel technical, does feel impenetrable, but actually just a little bit of knowledge can get you a very long way, but it has to be up to date. So Judith, thank you for sharing that bang up to date knowledge with us. Thank you for joining us. Happy SEOing, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. And remember to download the guide.
Thanks. Bye-bye.